I'm Ashleigh Carter.
I'm Bill I here at Bierstadt Lager House, and here is this week's tip of the week from Craft Beer and Brewing.
As brewers, we take all this time to make this beer. To Bill and I, when we created this brewery, one of those big things for us is we actively wanted to change the way that beer was served in the United States. This is something that we had a goal at, and we're just super tiny, and who knows if we knew that we'd have any effect at all. But I think that by just taking that process one step further and thinking about the way that you as a brewer want to enjoy your beer and giving that experience to someone else. We have a beer, probably the one that we're most known for, slow pour pills, and that is the actual name of it, not just a process. While I appreciate other people pouring their beer very slowly, this is what we wanted. It is the actual name of it. But the reason we do that, and the reason we named it that, because we wanted you to have an expectation about what it was. It's a process that is dear to us, the things that it does to the beer. But at a place that Bill and I were before, when we would get our pills, I would always ask it to be served that way. And it's kind of funny because if you go to a lot of European countries or whatever, that's how they serve it to begin with. But I would ask the bartender to always serve my beer that way. And so when we got the opportunity to do it ourselves, we wanted to give that same experience and the way that we like to drink our beer to the consumer. And I think that in your own tasting rooms or even at your house or whatever it is, by just changing some of these things in the way that you like it done and giving it to other people is kind of a presentation of you. Part of the reason we do that is obviously it looks awesome, but the other reasons are a little bit more practical. That pills, like I said, carbonation-wise is very high. So dissipating some of that carbonation a little bit right before you serve it, you get some of that beautiful lemony, kind of dusty hop aroma that we like so much. And just the lessening of the carbonation too makes it a little bit easier to drink. We chose that glass, right? So we only serve it in a 0.3 all year round, except for one day of the year. And part of that is because thinking about pills, you want that beer to be the same temperature from top to bottom. And so all of these little pieces are as much for the beer as every process we did on the hot side, every process we did in the cellar, everything we do to filter it and carbonate it, all come together at this moment to be served exactly the way that we want to present that beer. I don't think that process works for every beer. I think that I really like my Helles just poured straight up with just a nice kind of wet foam cap on there. But I like my pills, I like that bitter foam top to be present while you're drinking it. I like it to be the last thing left in the glass. I like the way that the carbonation is lessened by that process. And I think that whatever you decide to do, you should do it with an intent. And that's what we try to do here is intentional pouring, because we made the beer very intentionally. And I think it's very cool that I've seen across the country people starting to care more about these service process, whether it's in a Czech way, whether it's in a German, Italian way, whether it's just cask beer or it's the baskets for lambic or whatever it is. I think all of these things add to the experience of drinking and the experience to what the brewer intended the beer to be. So when it comes to serving beer, we want to start with a clean glass. I think that's something that we can all agree on. And we all agree what a clean glass looks like, right? It's devoid of bubbles on the side of it. There's no scratches in it. There's obviously nothing floating in it because all these things reduce head retention. And honestly, it's just gross. And we should all know by now what a clean beer glass is. However, I think something that's not as looked at as much is what a clean tap is. And we've gotten to this place in the United States that thinks that by submerging your faucet in your beer is an unclean practice. It can be an unclean practice, absolutely. If the beer tender doesn't know how to take care of the lines, if the faucets aren't being cleaned, if there is a brass faucet, which is perfectly acceptable here in the United States for some reason, or if you're at a beer festival and the glasses aren't clean and people are drinking out of it, this is all reasons to not submerge a faucet into a glass. However, there are situations where it is appropriate. The Lucre faucet, the side pull faucet, the Celli faucets with the long stems, they were actually meant to be submerged in the beer. And what you need to do is take care of these faucets and not let them get sticky and dried with beer and clean them frequently. But this is a very acceptable and proper way to serve beer. And it just means keeping all of your stuff clean. You wouldn't want to drink out of a dirty glass, you wouldn't want to drink out of a dirty faucet, and you wouldn't want to drink out of dirty lines. And as long as all these things are clean, it's a perfectly acceptable and the proper way to actually pour beer. It's just the way they're designed. By submerging the faucet in the beer, you're actually pouring the beer under the foam and creating a nice fat foam cap on top. And with that, we want to see at least a nickel's amount of foam. I guess the camera guys would probably disagree with me and say that's too much foam, but for a typical lager, you should have basically a nickel's size worth of foam on there. And even better, if you're going above and beyond, you should have an Ike mark that shows your customers exactly where they're getting beer to and exactly what the rest of that should be as foam. And that education is a huge part of what we're talking about. It's not enough to just say this is good or bad, but teaching the consumer and helping them understand why these things are true and giving them a better beer education. For more on our approach to lager brewing, click on the link below.